Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 8 of Economics is for Everyone. In this unit we're going to be covering off on utility. And also you may have noticed you don't get to see my face this time. I'm just going to be doing voiceovers for the slides. So you got some interesting things on the slides. I want that to be the focus of the presentation rather than you guys looking at my face. So anyway, let's head on to the definition of utility, which I have adopted from Building Queensland, where I formerly used to work. So what is utility? Utility is a term used by economists to describe the measurement of satisfaction that an individual experiences from any good, service, or event. Utility can be used to determine the extent a person enjoys an activity, such as playing a game of tennis or going to the theatre to watch a musical. So why is utility important? Well, basically, it is a very important factor in our decision making. So when we make decisions, we think of what benefits ourselves, what gives us value in life. So like, for example, why did I choose to go on holiday in Rome instead of Paris? Of course, cost would be a part of it, but also based on the fact that, we're going to get some enjoyment out of going to Rome. And that brings us to what I call perceived utility, because sometimes we don't know for sure how much value we're going to get from something. So we act on what we call our perceived utility, which again is another important factor to remember into that. And also, just simply put, people just want to be happy. And that's what basically we have is utility is satisfaction, or a roundabout way of saying happiness. We do certain things to make ourselves happy. A key concept in utility is what we call diminishing marginal utility. So first up, what is marginal utility? Marginal utility is the additional utility you get from something. So for example, you have a burger, you get a certain amount of utility from eating that burger. Then you eat a second burger, you get a certain amount of utility from that. And then a third burger, you get a certain amount of utility. But you realize that that is actually what we call diminishing. So the second burger is not as good as the first burger in the sense that we've already satisfied some of our hunger with the first burger. And with the third burger, well, the first two burgers have probably really filled us up. So we're not getting as much satisfaction from that as the previous two burgers. We have a graph here. We've got the y-axis utility and the x-axis quantity. As you can see, as the quantity is increasing, the amount of utility we're getting is increasing at a decreasing rate. We look at B versus C. B is greater than C, even though A is the same. We've got A in both. So the quantity is increased by A in both cases. But, you could be increasing from maybe 1 to 2 earlier on, whereas later on you could be going from 6 to 7. So the sixth unit of something gives you less utility than the first unit of that something. And eventually, if you have a look, you see that it flattens out and it'll actually probably start to fall. So let's go on the topic of food. So if you eat a lot of chips, for example, you get to a point where every additional chip is actually reducing your total utility, your total satisfaction, because you've come to a point where you are so full, it's no longer pleasurable at all. Utility falls under a topic known as consumer theory, and utility is often expressed using what we call indifference curves. So basically what an indifference curve is a curve that shows a combination of two or more goods that yield the same level of utility. So in this graph we have here, we have good A and good B. So the indifference curve shows all the levels of utility that are the same. They all fall on that curve. You'll notice as well that the curve is what we call convex to the origin. So that basically means there is diminishing marginal utility of these goods in respect to each other. So as you increase the quantity of good B, you need to increase the quantity of good B by more than the quantity of good A as the quantity of good B increases. If you know what I mean? So the amount of good A that you need to sacrifice is less and less as you get more and more good B, which shows the diminishing marginal utility in respect to each other. You can show diminishing marginal utility to more goods by actually showing different indifference curves. And you'll see the indifference curve slowly becoming closer and closer to each other as it expands outwards, as you see diminishing utility to both goods A and B. When I defined and described utility earlier on, I mentioned something known as perceived utility. In other words, we act based on our perceived utility rather than necessary utility itself, simply because there are a lot of unknown factors. Right? For example, we have here hook. deciding which car to buy. He only has a certain amount of information that he can make a decision with, and he'll only know a lot more information after he's made the purchase. So we have something called bounded rationality, which uses what we call satisficing. So satisficing is basically buying something or acquiring something that meets all of our basic needs, even though it may not be the best decision. For example, if Hook realizes that the Impala there meets all of his needs and he's a little bit unsure about the other three cars, then maybe buying the Impala would be the best decision for him, rather than the other cars, which he knows a little bit less information about. Another option is, if he doesn't want to just base it on the information he has, he could also acquire more information. He could do more research. Maybe he can do more test drives. Maybe he can talk to people that own these other cars, or he can do some research online. So there's other options as well. But if he is short on time and he needs to pick his car, for whatever reason he needs a car immediately, then maybe he'd go with the Impala if that's the car that fits his criteria. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this unit. There's a lot more we can discuss about utility. I believe I've covered off what I believe are the main points. If you want to know a little bit more about it, you can go to my Steemit blogs, and I've got several posts there about utility you can have a look at. In our next lesson, we kind of look at the other side of things, production. So utility is basically what drives your demand. So we're going to look at production, which is the other side, which is actually what is pushing supply. And then we'll talk about the two together when we cover demand and supply in the unit after that. Hope you enjoyed the lesson, and remember to do the multiple choice questions at the end. Thank you very much.